What I feel when I came to the first time in America, I'm so happy and I'm scared a little bit because America's different culture. Thank you. What I see is about American Asian in the film, in the movie. They did a good job, and I believe Asian American, they are so talented and they're doing a good job. Thank you.
About the story of my great grandparents and their involvement in the internment camps. First, before I say anything else, I want to reiterate that Dr. Garcia told us that after the internment camps, no one really talked about it. So there are some holes in my story and some things that we just don't know, but I'll tell you about the things that I do know. My great-grandparents are Dr. Kyoto and Chitosi Kawabe. They lived in Los Angeles, California. Obviously, my great-grandfather was a doctor, and my great-grandmother was a pianist. And an interesting story about her was that she got invited to perform at the Rose Bowl, which, as most of you know, is in California. And she had to perform behind a screen so that no one would be offended that she was Japanese. So there's just a fun fact there. They were interned at the same time as everyone else, but because he was a doctor, they didn't have to stay in the barracks like everyone else. They got to stay on a farm with a Mormon family, either in Camp Topaz in Utah or around there. And then they had elderly friends who were either their realtors or neighbors or something like that, who also watched their house for them while they were gone. So when they got out, they got their house back, and my great-grandmother would tell my grandmother that when they went home, everything was exactly in the same place as they left it. So they got pretty lucky there. When they were released from the camps, they only released my great-grandmother and the son that they had in there, Denny, but they kept my great-grandfather behind. And we're not sure why, because everyone was let go, and we're not sure who he was doctoring, but he wasn't allowed to go home with them. And so some of the things that we found left behind by my great-grandparents were letters written from my great-grandmother to my great-grandfather, and I read a couple of them. They're in really sloppy cursive, so they're kind of hard to read, but I got through a few of them, and it's just everyday stuff like, Denny did this today, I went to the market and got this today. They're actually pretty cute. But they're all addressed to Fielding, Utah. And I looked it up and I tried to find what was in Fielding, Utah, why my great-grandfather was there, and I could find nothing. So the mystery remains as to why he was in Fielding, Utah. So we just don't know. But these letters were dated from March to June 1945. So that gives you a time frame. And then another thing that we found is a letter from my great-grandfather from the United Christian Missionary Society. It's from, I believe, a fellow doctor and minister, and he is urging my grandfather to get permission to leave and come back to his practice because everyone else had been released and they all needed a doctor. So we were thinking that he's somewhere where he could ask to leave and maybe they denied him permission to leave, but we still have no idea where he was. And then the last cool thing that we found was a telegram from my great-great-grandfather to my grandfather, and it simply just says, "Wife ill, come home immediately." And we found out that that is actually the telegram to my great-grandfather letting him know that my grandma was being born. So that was fun and exciting to find. They died before I was even born, long time before I was even born, so I didn't get to meet them, but this is the history that I know. And
So, hey, welcome to the interview here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Very glad to be here. My name is Frank Furtado. I am a senior at Northern Arizona University, and I am majoring in English and minoring in theater.
Cool. So, Frank, I have a few questions for you about representations in media, and I want your personal experience, your opinion. I think it's really valuable for this. So, the first question that I have is how often do you see characters who you can physically identify with represented in American cinema?
So when you mean physically relate to, do you mean just
Like,
how similar do they look to me?
yeah,
or?
like Filipino characters in movies.
Okay. So in American media, there isn't a lot of Filipino characters or actors in a sense. However, there are some Asian American actors such as Rinko Kikuchi and Chow Yun Fat, but they're not usually in work. So
Yeah.
I don't usually see a lot of them.
So, like, when you do see them, what kinds of roles do they usually fill?
If we're talking about the different actors themselves and actresses, the male actors are usually portrayed as either the bad guy or they are the henchman or the lieutenant of the bad guy. So they're usually on the antagonist side.
Yeah. So they're kind of like the enforcer or kind of the martial arts guy that beats up the main hero.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you ever feel that these representations are in any way valid or truthful? Or are they based more on stereotypes?
I would say, in my personal opinion, there is some truth behind every stereotype, but there are context behind it. Naturally, there is going to be this assumption that Asian people know martial arts because naturally, mainland Asia and the Pacific Islands and all the other countries of Asia are naturally where most of the martial arts come from. However, to have that automatic association that Asian people know martial arts is sort of a dangerous assumption to make.
Yeah. Based on the ways in which these characters are represented, how do you think American society views you? And how does society expect you to act?
I would say, in terms of how I'm supposed to act, I would say there's supposed to be this sense of stoicism and deep, profound wisdom about me, since martial arts has that connotation of natural, wise learning and teachings. And what was this? What was the other part?
How do you think society expects you to act?
In terms of how they expect me to act,
Based on like your ethnicity.
I would say, still going along with that assumption that with the martial arts, there's the sense of, always be threatening, always have dominance and have power. So naturally try to work towards that instead of just being your own person.
Yeah. How do you personally think that American filmmakers could improve their margins of representation in cinema?
I would say it's this weird Ouroboros situation where there aren't a lot of Asian American actors out in the theatrical world and the film industry in general. So the roles that are given to the Asian American people are sort of typecasted. However, that problem can be solved if more Asian Americans are gone into the film industry. However, because there's so little, not many people are tempted or persuaded to go into the industry itself, and so it creates this kind of cycle. I would say bringing in more Asian actors and actresses into roles that are usually specifically given to the majority of the other races, such as Caucasian and African American, and so you have them more as the protagonists of films and stories.
Instead of as just like the villain or short round.
Mhm.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Frank. Thank you for your insight, and keep
All right.
it real.
Thank you very much for interviewing me.
So first, can we have you introduce yourself?
My name is Ray Landry. My father is from Nashville, New Hampshire, and my mother was born in Japan. Yes, I do, because typically I think Asians are put in, if they are in the cinema, they are only playing certain type of roles, and sometimes it's not represented in the best way. So I think I think all Asians are underrepresented in media.
Do you feel these representations are valid or truthful in any way, or are they based more on stereotypes?
I think most of the Asian characters are based on stereotypes, because I think the media, especially over the years, people see Asians as a certain way or act a certain way, and typically that's not who Asians are. It's just what I think some people see how they should be. But
Well, thank you very much.
well, thank you.
I just want to thank God for all the pretty women he let into my life, all the Benjamins he let me count.